Yeah, it's obviously early. I think usually when I do these interviews, it's always the second day and it's path on yet, right? And we're, it's day 2 of spring ball, but it's really practice 12 for us. We get 10 of those OTAs in the winter. We only had 6 last year, and so we had 10. And so that whole part is just teaching, even though we get to go against the offense, to put you ahead so you can hop quicker into spring ball. And so still a lot to be determined, but at least we have our base schemes in, and now it's more of finishing and who can go make plays on the ball. And that one you're talking about there was Hector, and obviously a kind of point of emphasis that we need to get a whole lot better on this year is taking the football away. We're doing that, and I'm sure you heard Coach Scoot talk about it in special teams. But that's a team stat, right? Taking the ball on offense and taking the ball away on defense, and you kind of had a teach clip there at the end of an effort play and punching the ball out, which is good to see.
Despite all the shifts of players and that kind of thing, you have to feel much better going into this spring as opposed to last year, where you are at the same time, just based on the experience coming back.
Yeah, it starts, your Coach Kelly talk about time, just continuity with the staff, not losing any full-time coaches there on defense, and the majority of our support staff is back as well. And it's just nature of college football, right? You're getting some pieces back, but then you're getting a whole bunch of new players in. And we have quite a bit returning from last year, especially when you look at the numbers in our conference. And so, like anything, you're hoping, like any draft, anybody's gonna say, right? You're hoping you always upgrade. It's just consistent of trying to find better. And our job as coaches is to replace the guys that are starting, and their job as players is to not get replaced, right? And that's where competition always occurs. And so, it's obviously good going on year 2 with that. And then you're always looking for ways to not only get better with players and acquisition there, but schemes. What can we get better at after we look at in the league, and what are your core beliefs in that we don't want to change too far from, that you're always kind of turning over every rock and looking to see where we can improve.
One of those players to come back is CJ, and Coach talked about building from within the trenches. What does he do, and how big of a boost was that for you to see that he was coming back?
Yeah, and I get asked every week, with the media when we play a game about CJ, and you can't say enough about him. As far as just his leadership, his day-to-day business in the building, and what he brings to the D-line room, and all those guys. He sets the tone in that room, and then that sets the tone in the defense. And so, not only is he a good player, and he's so strong, physical, he's tough. He's everything you want, right, in a defensive player. And so it was getting him back. Kind of nervous there for a little bit, and getting him back was huge. And so that's where we always started, was building from inside out. And it's one thing to go against our offense every day, and it's another thing as we're looking at our schedule of it's a run league, And so we got 3 option teams in those first 6 or 7 games there, and FAU, Florida, all those teams are going to start with running the ball. And so if you can't stop the run there on defense, you're going to have long days. So that's where it starts up front.
Was that part of the reason for Wilkie moving inside?
Yeah, and Wilkie's a big kid, and so we felt like we needed to get some more twitch and pass rush ability on the edge, which we thought we do, and to be determined. But those guys have proven ability so far in other schools, and so we got Jay Crable and Jonathan Bax, with Josh Roberts coming back. Roman Garcia is a kid from junior college that has some physicality. G that played a lot of snaps, and then Kenyon Garner are guys that we had in the rush room, and so moving Wilkie inside add some depth. And like I said, we've kind of gone a little bit more scholarship numbers on the front and a little bit less in the back end, just because naturally those guys get banged up a little bit more throughout the year, and you're going to play 25 snaps at defensive tackle compared to 50 at a safety spot or whatever the case may be. And so you've got to have some depth there, because if you get in there, you can have some problems.
Okay, so you mentioned one of the guys I wanted to ask about, and that's Roman. He has a wrestling background. Sometimes that can prove to be an added benefit. What are you expecting out of him in particular?
Yeah, Roman's got one speed, and we got to kind of slow him down in football schools a little bit, which is always
Tasmanian devil.
Absolutely, and so I always tell these guys all the time, you got to know your strengths and weaknesses as a player, right? And so he's not as long, as twitchy as what you typically want on an end piece, an edge piece, but he plays with that elite edge that we always talk about, and he's got that screw loose a little bit up there as far as he's from Oklahoma, and he's kind of got the cauliflower ears there as far as playing the wrestler. And so, pads will come on, and I'm hoping that we get exactly what we saw at tape at NEO, and we know we can be of just playing really, really hard. And that's what you want at the end of the day. You know, you're going to project some on guys that have the intangibles, and then there's guys that have proven what they can do on tape and play with an elite edge. That's the number one fundamental is strength and effort.
The other guy, real quick follow-up, Joseph, Kansas linebacker transfer. Fair to say, probably wanted a little more out of the linebackers last year, but then again, first year, right? Mm-hmm. So you're, like you mentioned, going in, you got some continuity, but you added him as well. Mm-hmm. Middle linebacker, correct, slated. And what are you expecting out of him, given his third year?
Yeah, this will be his last year. So he played
fourth year. I'm sorry.
He played a couple years there at Bowling Green, was all-conference linebacker.
Yeah,
Bowling
okay.
Green played a lot of snaps. I want to say 700 snaps each year.
Mm-hmm.
Transferred to Kansas. Had the starting linebacker job at Kansas, and then broke his forearm. So ended up really didn't play, but just a couple games last year. Sat out with red shirt, and so
their loss, our game.
There we go. So he's a Tampa kid coming back home, wants to be closer to home, and so he's a guy that's proven, right? Has played a lot of football. He's physical. He's got really good instincts, and so anytime you can get those guys with Leon Hart and KJ that had shoulder surgery that are out, that will be fine and healthy for next year. We felt like losing Tyler Stolsky that we needed to get a guy that could come in, that could play, that had playing experience, and also has some quick twitch and instincts. And so that way we could start moving a few pieces around, and you still have Zaire and then Hector, like I talked about, and then the other one was Nate Fisher, the other kid we brought in to kind of compete with Quez at linebacker. That played at San Diego, that played a lot of snaps too. It's smart, and it's bulked up in the weight room. And so
very productive player. Production,
right? Yeah. And that's the fine line. You always want to take guys that have proven that they can play. It's not always the case. Sometimes you're not as lucky. We got to go project at times, but no, that's always the ultimate goal if we can get those guys to do that.
Heading into year two and looking a little bit back at 2025, what do you think has been the biggest adjustment, whether it be from how you're handling things or looking at the defensive scheme that you've made heading into this upcoming season?
Yeah, great question. It's we fail forward, right? Everything you look at just, okay, schematic-wise, what are we doing? What are we good at? Do we do too much? What's our personnel like in recruiting? What's our year-round plan like? And now being through the league, you're like, okay, what do we get from our offense every time, but what do we need to go practice? I think at the end of the day, we're trying to do simple better, right? And not just have a bunch of different things and, okay, who can do what? And then obviously as new pieces coming in, what do they do well, put them in those positions, and then not make guys think. A lot of times I've been a part of so many different schemes, and you have so much, hey, I like this is a good call versus this, and this is a great call, this is a great call. But what can the players execute and play fast and play violent and be able to adapt to everything? The hard part now is you look at on offense. I saw a stat the other day where I think it's North Texas, just number one scoring offense in the country, and that would have been the third or fifth or seventh a few years ago. And offenses now, it's kind of, instead of just tempo, it's a lot more shifts and motions and huddling, and so you're kind of taking the wait till you come out in the formation, see the formation on offense, and make a call that you like, right? And you got to go ahead and make a call, not knowing what it might be because they're shifting, they're huddling. And so you got to feel good about that menu, that the players know how to react and adjust to everything that comes out, where it's not too much, but you're not so vanilla where you get beaters all day long. If you line up on one defense against Coach Kidley, he's going to draw up every little thing known to man. And so I think that's one of the biggest things is do simple better, be able to stop the run, be able to get takeaways, and then obviously get off the field on third down. And that's where I think you can start to window dress some presentations, but try to keep as much same as that you're practicing all the time with your guys.
And following on that, being in this era of college football where there's so much player movement, do you think that's going to help in terms of helping some of the newer guys and some guys that maybe don't have the reps that some of the starters that we lost last year have, really get acclimated and feel comfortable with them?
That's the thing too, right? Is this thing is year round. So they came in and we started like that. Once the players get here, we have meetings that are lifting and we just teach football 101. Yeah, right. Of just, hey, what part of the field is a curl flat zone? What offense is doing P and 10 on the series? Here's shot zone. Here's red zone. you teach 2 weeks of just football knowledge that you can't take for granted that some of these guys, even though they've been in college 3 or 4 years, some of them don't know, you just hop straight in scheme. And then you go 5 straight weeks of football school of teaching scheme and going against the offense, but you're just more teach speed. And then you go to spring ball, and then you repeat it all again in the summer. And then the summer will add a little bit more option and all that. And so as you do all that, you also have new players in, and some of the guys that have been here, like Sweeney is an example in my room, where you're like, he's like, man, he's picking up so much faster. Kyle's another one. And you're like, yeah, this would be awesome if we had this and we had the same kids for 4 or 5 years. But as you're getting new players in, you're kind of like, okay, well, what can we do well that they know to play fast and execute, because you're going to have new guys. Now, the beauty of it now is no spring window. So come in the summer, they're hearing it now in spring for the 2nd time, and then the summer will be the 3rd time, and then fall camp will be the 4th. And so that's the beauty of, last year we had 7 new DBs come in the summer. And so now our whole team is here, but one DB that we signed from a high school kid, and so he'll be here this summer, and so your team is your team now.
And building upon that, look at your secondary. How are you feeling about the room as a whole, and what do you want to see from them over the course of the spring?
Yeah, I think it's to be determined in a lot of areas. We move some pieces around, and so you're kind of like, okay, who fits where? Who's the best 5? Who's the best 8 to 10? Right? Because I got to get injured in the day, and so there's some guys that are just corners or just a nickel or just safeties, and there's guys that can play multiple spots. Said we put more scholarships to the front, so we kind of recruit more DBs, as you will, that can play multiple positions. And you also figure, okay, who can cross-train and have the learning capacity to kind of know a mixture of things, and then, no, let's pump the brakes a little bit and let's get him really good at this. And so we'll find out when these pads come on. We obviously coming back, we have, starting that corner, you got Queso, Demarius McGee that's coming back, and then really it's all new players. We got J.K. Johnson that's played a lot of football at different schools, really athletic kid, getting comfortable to stay at corner. And then some guys, Austin Ware that's played a lot, Travis Jackson, the freshman, that's first coming in here, and so he's learning for the first time, and Amar, Reynolds, and Cam. And so we also have these guys coming on in that we've got to get healthy too. That's the thing, is all these guys are different programs. They come on in, they all have different beliefs and strength coach and all that, and guys are getting acclimated, and so we've got to make sure that everyone gets back soft tissue and taking care of their bodies and get healthy so they can be on the field. And then Chris Tooley's back at nickel. He can play multiple things. So we're kind of seeing what Duda and Wallace can do there at nickel, because they obviously have played corner in the past. Can they play inside in the slot? And then at safety, Tyson Brooks is the guy we brought in. We moved Damon Allen from nickel to safety. So we're shuffling around to kind of see what they can do. And then obviously, okay, who's developing the best where, and then what's the backup plans and all that. As coaches always think the worst, right? This guy goes down, week 2, what's our plan, right? And so I think there's a lot to be determined in that room of who steps up when we get padded on and find out these next 13 practices in the spring.
It's gone great. The good thing is, we still have some continuity. Walker was here last year, Alex was here last year, and the guys that we added are veteran guys. Colin's been doing this for a while. Reed's been doing this for a while. So it helps when you have veteran guys like that can come in and they kind of understand what it's like to be in a college program. The other thing that's helped us is we had a great, basically an off-season program with our football school between the weightlifting and the kicking and all that kind of stuff where they could work with each other. So, the first 2 days when we're out there, they've been doing it for 6 weeks together. So it wasn't like it was brand new to them. But I feel great about those guys. They're very talented. We had a great group last year. It's hard to replace those guys, but I really like the guys that we have.
Traditionally, the special teams has saved FAU, and there was a lot of times last year that because of coaches' aggression, we didn't see special teams like we may have done in previous years, but the team still, percentages were up, everything was fantastic. How do you teach that? Your time may be limited, but let's make the best of it.
Yeah, we want to be aggressive. We're an extension of our offense. We want to be aggressive. So the reality is, in special teams, you get one shot. It's not like we can go out there for a 5th down, you get 4th down, and that's it. You get one shot. And so those guys really, I think, understand the importance of that. And that comes from Coach Kitley and his, importance on special team. All the coaches, those guys out there today were really coaching hard. And so the team buys into that. And I think the team also understands for their personal value what special teams does for them, both on this team and hopefully in their future career in the NFL. So it's an investment in themselves to be great on special teams. And when we get our opportunities in the game, we had explosive returns last year. We flipped the field. So we've got to be ready to capitalize that, and we're going to get big-time field goals. We're going to get those opportunities because of our offense and the nature of our offense. We're going to be in scoring position a lot. And so when we get a chance to kick it, we've got to be ready to kick it if that's what we got to do.
You mentioned early on there the veteran guys that you brought in last season. I think the thing was a little different. You were talking about competition at the beginning. So are you envisioning those two players that you mentioned potentially being the guys, or are you still evaluating that?
There's always competition. The guys that we had last year, like Alex, he's developing and coming along, and he should contribute this year. He really should. He's got a huge leg. But when you bring those guys in, in the portal, I was looking for an experienced guy because of what we lost. We had 3 seniors last year, so I wanted to be able to replace that with someone that has experience. So when you bring those guys in, they understand that their expectation is no different than what they had been doing, just playing and at a high level. So they have that expectation for themselves, but there's always competition. That's just the reality of this level of college football.
When it comes to this spring, you have a limited number of practices to really get through a lot of different things, whether that be your unit or offense or defense. But when it comes to your units, what are you mainly looking for over the course of this practice and into the spring game?
Yeah, well, I told him it was a few things, but the number one thing we're looking for is what we just talked about, competition. Because of all the guys we brought in the portal, not just in the specialist room, but at other positions, we got to see who's going to be our gunner on punt. And we got to see who else can help us in the return game. Who's going to be guys up front blocking and who's going to be returning kicks. So that's what I'm looking for in the spring is you get to see these guys in the off season, but now that we have the pads on and the lights are on, what can they do in those opportunities? So it's really going to be an evaluation. I want those guys to learn everything we're doing on special teams and then see who's back up there to play fast and execute that.
When it comes to a punt gunner or a returner or even a field goal kicker, is there a type of archetype that you're looking for, or is it kind of you want to see how different guys compete, how they feel comfortable or don't feel comfortable over the course of practice, so you're able to choose that best guy?
Yeah, I think there is a certain prototype for every position. Like a punt returner, that guy's got to be fearless because you got 22 guys coming at you. It's not just the 11 guys on the other team, but everyone that's trying to block those guys, they're all running at you. So you got to be fearless. A kick return's a little bit different. A kick return is more like he's got the ball with a little more space, but there's going to be a seam about this big, and he's got to hit it and run through the smoke. And we're looking for a guy like that for kick return. And then, at all the different positions that kind of goes like that, and with a gunner, you're looking for someone that's fast, can make plays in space, can tackle. So there is a prototype, but at the end of the day, on special teams, there's a grit factor. And it's the guys that are willing to do the dirty jobs and who are just relentless and play with fanatical effort. So trying to see who those guys are when they're tired, who can push through that and go and figure out who those guys are. That's a big deal.
And from a leadership perspective, special teams guys I feel like are very slept on at times in terms of leadership. A lot of guys look at offense or defense, but sometimes those special teams leaders can be some of the most important guys on the team. What are you looking for from players in terms of stepping up in that leadership role in specials over the course of the spring?
Yeah, well, one thing we talk about is we want all of our best players to at least start on one special team, whether they're the best linebacker, all-conference linebacker, running back, whatever it is. So I want those guys to play on the special teams and to really instill how important that is to everybody else. And there are certain guys that they might be a backup on offense and defense, but that's their thing, is special teams. So they're the ones making sure that it's exactly how it's got to be, and they're bringing that energy to everybody else. So it's a little bit of both. You have those offense and defensive guys that are natural leaders, and then you have some guys that they're just special teams guys, and that's what their role is, and they buy into that, and they can bring that energy for everybody else.